record this as well. So you have to know about some hardware devices. Obviously, one of the most important one is your network interface card. Network interface card basically is installed is integrated within the motherboard of most of the PCs that you see nowadays. So it's there attached, embedded with the motherboard. So basically what NIC card does is it turns the binary data into electrical signals. So obviously, data travels in binary form, in electrical signals. So it has to be converted, okay? Like analog, digital, and digital to analog. NIC card basically is there to help computers and devices to communicate between each other. So it's a hardware. So when we say that NIC is given a unique hardwired or hard-coded MAC address, which it actually means is that a MAC address is a physical address that will uniquely identify every device. Uniquely, I use the word uniquely, identify every device on the network, which means this is the reason why MAC address being 32-bit is a hexadecimal number, not basically just a number system like an IP address, because we have lots of devices. We have 10 millions of devices, billions of devices, in fact, and they have to be distinguished on the network. So a MAC address will physically tell uniquely what device is there. Okay. So yes, you have wireless network interface cards as well. Okay. You have wired as well. Those wired that you have, you might have heard of Ethernet, where you can plug in the cable. Okay. So they could be connected through USB port as well. Okay. They could be connected wirelessly through an antenna. So you have a wireless card, and the wireless card basically has an antenna. Okay. And you can connect your desktop or any device by transferring data through microwaves. Okay. Then you have a discussion about media access control. Okay, the MAC address we're referring to. Okay, a MAC address generally is 32-bit or 48 bits. Okay, depends on it. Now it's 48 because more and more devices are joining into the network. It's just like when we discussed was IPv4 and IPv6. The reason why IPv6 came in was because IPv4 was limited to 6 billion devices, and IPv6 is now limited to trillions of devices. It's 132-bit hexadecimal that can hold trillions of devices. IPv4 was very limited. Okay, so because of converting to hexadecimal, obviously lots of devices have been added to it. So what's an internet protocol? I think so. We did discuss this last time when I discussed with you was TCP and IP. We had a discussion on this. Transmission control protocol works with internet protocol, and where we discussed was how TCP cuts down the packets, labels them, make sure they're delivered, make sure that TCP IP of the recipient and the sender is mentioned on the packet header. IP will make sure IP basically is the address. So IP is the address where it's going. Okay. So IPv6 and IPv4, like I just told you, this is your IPv4 address, and this is your IPv6, just like an hexadecimal. So it's right 128-bit, or you can even write a 132-bit as well. So data packets, again, if you remember, we had a long discussion on it. Data packets are totally related to TCP. So transmission control protocol will only take place if you have data packets. And the property of data packets is the same as TCP. Obviously, packets is a property of TCP, so it's part of it. So a packet of data, which is transmitted through transmission control protocol, the packet header has the IP address of the sender receiver, the sequence number, the packet size, how many data packets have been sent on the whole message, and cuts down into 8 packets, so on and so forth. We had a discussion on this, so I'm not elaborating more. Okay. Hubs, dumb devices. Hubs are devices that are used to connect different networks together. Hub will just send the data to all the computers. It does not work on the concept of IP addressing the way a switch does. Switch has its own dedicated microprocessor that will enable every packet to reach its destination device through an IP. So it's a much more sophisticated device as compared to an hub, referring to a switch. But both devices are there to connect devices, computers, um, to each other. Okay, so because you could get a question where they would say is compare and contrast a hub with a switch. So obviously you have to tell where hub and switch actually is, and contrast you tell that switch works on IP addressing. It's more sophisticated. It transfers data more rapidly, more fast as compared to a hub. Right? Are you with me, both of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good. So switches basically are intelligent versions of hub. I just told you it's an intelligent device. They work through IP addressing. They have their own MAC address, and there is something known as a lookup table. That's important. Let's discuss this. So these are your ports. Okay. So you have different port numbers. They are just referred to 6 ports over here. You have different ports. Okay. Every port number has its own MAC address. Yes, obviously it should. Because if I want to transfer the data from port number 3, I should have an address to it. I should know which port am I referring to. Because if I don't have an address to a port, how will I know which port from where data is coming or where it is going? So a lookup table basically is a table that refers to each port with its respective MAC address, so that we know where the data packets have to go and we can manage them in a much more appropriate manner. That's why we have this lookup table in case of a switch, right? So because why am I referring to it? Because obviously we should know and we should be able to explain the purpose of a lookup table, which is used for switches. And I just told you, it has a list of all the ports within the switch and the corresponding MAC addresses for every port, so that we could refer to every port the way we want to. Okay, so just like we use the word lookup, we can look up for the port and the MAC addresses. So in summary, both hubs are used to connect. The evaluation question, these points were important. Both hubs and switch use data packets. Similarities: hub sends data packets to every device, whereas switches data packets to a specific one. Okay, skill is lower with hubs than switches because of IP addressing. I told you that when you have a unique IP address, you are uniquely pointing to a device. In case of hub, you're not doing that. A switch uses lookup table, and a hub doesn't do that. Switches use MAC addresses to locate the destination device. Bridges are basically, but I'm sorry, मैं randomly discuss किए जा रहा हूँ. If you want to ask me, you can interrupt in between. Okay, I'm assuming कि अगर आपको कोई question आप नहीं पूछ रहे तो question नहीं है. Okay, so I'm just going on. Is it fine, both of you? मैं इसलिए बोली जा रहा हूँ.
Yes, sir.
अच्छा ठीक है, good. If you have a question, please you can interrupt me in between. So bridges basically are there to connect basically two LANs together. You have two LANs, you want to connect them together, you need as a bridge. So bridge again is not a very intelligent device. It's just there as a connector. So one of the example over here is we have one LAN topology here, one over here. I want to connect them. I use as a bridge. Routers obviously are used to route the data, to tell where the data is going. So you know what routers are. You have them in your home. Everyone has them. So the route, it came from the word route. So which route do you want the data to go on? So we use a router for that. So one of the example over here is that from the ISP. Okay, this could be an ISP, internet service provider, that connects to the internet. I need a router in between to connect to a LAN. Okay. By the way, we could even have over here in between is a proxy server. Okay, right? So that's what your routers basically.
Can you kindly explain proxy servers?
Okay, a proxy server is a server that is a middleware between the ISP and the LAN. So a proxy server is there to administer what kind of data should come in and go out of the LAN. A proxy server is there to have a firewall installed within it. A proxy server controls the amount of data usage and the list of files, URLs, websites that can be visited and that cannot be visited. So it basically, as far as the access to the internet is concerned, and whenever we are connecting a LAN to a WAN, okay, basically wide area internet. Sorry for my stepper writing. In between, I need some to monitor this. If I want a server that will be monitoring all this, I would use is a proxy server. So proxy server will be monitoring all that. I hope I made it clear.
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is what you have as a router. So please, there's some topics that I would like you to, as far as a router is concerned, please make points of notes. So you should know the properties of a router. Okay. So do that. Please note it down. May make some points of a router yourself. It's a very typical question that comes in. What does it do? So when data packet is received from a one port, the router inspects the IP address and determines whether the data packet is meant for its own network or another one. If the data packet is meant for its own network, then packet is routed. Like I just told you, it's there to route the data packets where they have to go, what route they have to take. Okay, a router basically has a routing table, just like we discussed before. So routing table will know that where the data is going, okay, which device it's going. So just like the way we had in our switches was the port number and the MAC address, over here we have basically is, yes, the port number, but the IP address. The difference we have over here is the IP address. So you can see over here, this diagram is quite good. This tells you over here is data packets are sent from C1 to R1. So let me just go back. So what we have over here is, it tells us that how routing of data from C1 to C10 goes. So let me just discuss this exactly from here. So we have C stands for computers over here, R are the routers, and S are, these are the switches. So I have these switches over here. As you can see, these switches are connecting the following networks together. Network 1, okay, network 4. Okay, right. So suppose I want to communicate between both of them. Data packets are sent from C1 to R1, right, through the switch. R1 checks the IP address and notes data packets are not intended for any device on network 1. Okay. The packets are then forwarded onto the internet RO. Okay. So obviously then from R1 they're forwarded into RO. Okay. The IP address, the header of the data packets matches that of R4. This ensures that each data packet is eventually forwarded to R4. Okay, just elaborate it. You can simply mention it. R4 recognizes that IP address for each data packet refers to network 4. So the data packets that, like I just told you before, that when we are sending the data packets in the header, we have an IP address that where do you want data packets to go. So if I know where the data packets have to be forwarded, it will be mentioned there. So it will ensure data packets eventually reach R4. R4 will recognize the IP address of each packet and will forward it to network 4. Okay. So they're just mentioning points, whatever I did elaborate even to you before. Yes, over there, they just told you the role of computers, switches, and routers. So routing table, I repeat again, routing table will be there to tell you the route of data that has to go through different routers and reach the destination, right? So we have over here is good comparison between a router and a bridge, although it's a very weird comparison because they're totally different. Okay, so you can go through this. It's not a big deal. We have discussed both of them. Okay, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. We should know what Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is. It's quite generic question. We should be able to evaluate Wi-Fi and Bluetooth for a particular scenario. Wi-Fi data transfer rate is faster, Bluetooth is less. line of sight is required for Bluetooth. It's Wi-Fi, it's not required. Okay. So this is again something where I would like you to make points. Okay. Right. Wi-Fi basically works through spread spectrum frequency hooping. Now, what is that? Well, I'll just tell you. Spread spectrum frequency hooping, probably studied in physics. It's the way we alter the wavelengths in such a way that, for example, if I'm sending the data, I will alter the wavelength in such a way. Okay, or probably at the end I'll make it this much. And when someone will receive it, exactly the same type of wavelength. I'll try to draw the same one. So the recipient will receive quite the same thing. So only the recipient will know at what particular frequency do I have to receive my data. So we will be sharing that. Spread spectrum hooping basically came after World War II. Germans invented it. It was used for military. It was very secure way of data transmission because it was very tough for anyone to intercept in between. I really don't have to go into a lot of detail, but since it's bold in red, just want to discuss what spread spectrum frequency hooping means. Like hooping, I told you, we change the wavelength in such a way that it would be very, very different and no one would know it. Okay. Only the receiving device or the person will be knowing about it. So please make sure good points about Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I will share some JPEGs, some PDF files with you by tomorrow. Please go through them. Good comparison of the following things. I will do that. Okay. So yes, fine. But I'll share this with you. An easier version. I'll share with you. Cloud storage. I don't really have to make a lot of explanation. It's something you know. I mean, we're talking about Gmail, Dropbox, what cloud storage is. Okay. Public means using third party. Private means using your own server to store data. Hybrid means using your own and hiring someone else as well. So cloud computing, cloud storage is the future. This is where data science comes in as well. So typical advantages of cloud storage. Yes, I think so. It's quite generic. Ali, do you agree with me? Coffee generic points. है ना? है ना? Cloud storage के advantages काफी generic है ना? कोई issue तो नहीं है ना? I mean, you can access them from anywhere you want to. Backup is taken automatically. If your hard drive fails, you have the backup. You have a lot of capacity, but obviously at a price. Security shows a disadvantage. If no internet is there, you cannot access it. Cost could be higher at times. Potential failure of cloud storage company. There is always a possibility that. So wherever there is any sort of disadvantage coming in, we will talk about that. Okay. So obvious advantages, ये वही लिखे हैं, but typical से हैं, please go through it. If there's a point, let me know. बहुत typical है. So the way we explain कि data security का issue क्या आ सकता है, data loss का security क्या issue आ सकता है generally. So LAN, you know what a LAN is. I'm not elaborating. Come on, you know since middle school what a LAN. What's a wireless LAN? When you connect wireless LAN cards at the back of devices, and when do not connect through cables, we're talking about wireless LAN. And obviously, you need to have access points where you could connect all these devices together. And we again talk about spread spectrum because we are connecting it through your Wi-Fi, obviously. Okay. Wireless network, wired network. Please, again, very important for all of you. Please, ये note करना. This is important table. इसको please कर लेना. जिसको मैं कह रहा हूँ उनको कर लेना. बेटा, ये आपके ज़हन में होनी चाहिए बात है. ये आ सकता है. So wide area network we're talking about is our internet. Okay, so WAN, MAN, metropolitan area network, where we have in a metropolitan city we connect different banks or companies together. This obviously is a lot far away, and this is within a building. Okay. So security issues, passwords. So if you're over the internet, you have to have different authentication techniques. You have to have passwords. How to keep your passwords safe? Again, we keep strong passwords. Make sure no one gets into it. Okay, right. There are other authentication techniques. Okay. So you have biometrics. Okay, systems. You have pattern recognition, facial recognition, right? Magnetic strip readers. Okay, you have holographic image as well as now in smart and some IDs now as well. Okay. Advantages of magnetic strip cards. They're not expensive. One of the most magnetic cards can be remotely deactivated. Yes, they can. So okay, we could remotely deactivate them. So the card can be multi-purpose. For example, it could be used for lots of applications, but it's secure. It's vulnerable to magnetic fields. If there's magnetic field, magnetic strip could get damaged. They could wear out very, very fast. Smart cards, when you have a chip, you know what a smart card is. So you have a chip. It's used for radio frequency identification as well. Okay. So smart cards, contactless cards are used in debit credit cards, in hotel cards, in royalty cards. Lots of places we're using that. Okay. Right. So physical token basically is a form of authentication in the form of physical solid objects. So physical token basically contain internal blocks, and when a PIN and other authentication details are entered, then one-time password is generated. So at times when you are basically enabling your debit card or credit card for the very first time, they will ask you to create a physical token. That could be generated just right away, and afterwards it's of no use. So obviously, so it's first time it's only used. We call it physical token. Electronic tokens basically are there when they are used online. So it's the same thing, but it's done online in digital form, okay, without any human intervention. Anti-malware software is actually a topic of security, but they have also discussed it again. Okay, antivirus, talk about it. Okay. Electronic conferencing, video conferencing, what devices are used. Okay, you should know what's audio conferencing. Obviously, when you don't have video, just discuss with audio. And web conferencing is when you use a web portal on a web page. So web conferencing includes lots of features which are there on a web portal to share documents. Are you both with me? I'm just talking to myself. Tazeem, Ali?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Right. So, you know what? This is web conferencing. Okay, you know, I don't have to explain what video conferencing and all that is. Yes, you should know what codec. Codec का पता होना चाहिए आपको.
VIOP समझा दीजिए.
जी, बेटा VIOP, Voice over Internet Protocol. Okay, which is video conferencing. Okay, Voice over Internet Protocol. So Voice over Internet Protocol is your video conferencing. Video conferencing और web conferencing में बहुत थोड़ा फर्क है. Like I just told you, web conferencing basically is audio conferencing. तो बता दूँगा phone क्या आपको पता ही होगा. So जब phone करते हैं, so it's basically a webinar example is a good example. When you use a website का built-in feature होता है, and within that you can actually conduct it's just as video conferencing. It's quite the same thing, but it's built in within a website. It's not a separate software. That's the major difference. Web conferencing came in not for video, it came in for audio initially, but now video is a part of it. इन दोनों में फर्क ये है. अच्छा, और let me go back. मैं बात कर रहा था. Yes, codec. Codec basically is there to obviously compression and decompression. So codecs are very important for video conferencing. Why are we discussing this topic here? I'll tell you why. Because your video conferencing software should have a very good compression and decompression software. So, like, for example, I have a very bad bandwidth here and you have good one. If you want the video conferencing to go on, my software should be able to compress the data to such an extent that the communication the data transfer, the video conferencing keeps on going on. So it will compress the data simultaneously in real time so efficiently that we will not feel as if there is a big problem. But if obviously the internet bandwidth gets low to a lot of extent, then this is an issue. So codec means a built-in feature within the software that allows compression, decompression to take place so that your transmission, your communication in video conferencing goes on. Echo cancellation software, obviously, if there is an echo appearing, it will try to cancel it. Microphones have built-in and softwares also have built-in because we're talking about the properties of a video conferencing software. Okay. Again, we're reducing cost. We're at the very typical points. Okay. I'm sure there's no difficulty and disadvantage. Yes, very easy, but make sure you know them. And I'm sure you know them, but you should know the good points. Audio conferencing, you might have conducted audio conferencing on phone, on wireless and all that, where you have to share a pin. So there's a private pin, a public, and you have to share karni, and then you can allow the audio conferencing to take place, right? इसमें जो important चीज नहीं सारी हो तो गई हैं. So इसमें yes, there are some good comparisons जो मैं आपसे share करूँगा. Okay, इंशाल्लाह कल मैं करूँगा आपके साथ. उनके through जरूर चल जाना. Evaluation, compare and contrast is something that we should be discussing. आप इसके through एक और बार चले जाओ. Go through this chapter, बड़ा important chapter मैं बिल्कुल आपसे कहता हूँ. If there is something that you don't get it, next class में let's discuss that even. हम वो भी discuss कर लेंगे.
Okay, sir, सिर्फ एक question है. हम cloud के advantages में ये भी तो लिख सकते हैं कि in case if your computer catches virus, the data जो है on cloud is secure.